What changes about customer success when your team is the product? Not supporting it, not onboarding it, actually delivering what the customer is paying for. My guest today is Melissa McMillan, General Manager at Virio. Virio is a neo-services company, an AI-powered model where the team and not the customer operates the product. The company came out of stealth in January and is already adding $1 million in new revenue every month. In this conversation, we get into why the path from contract to outcome is simpler, but there's nowhere to hide if you're not delivering. How Melissa discovered that account managers who were supposed to handle 20 accounts could really only handle 7. Why she hires for a profile that combines account management and content strategy in one person, and what AI makes possible there. How her team uses data to re-strategize when content is not landing, and why becoming AI native is the single biggest differentiator for anyone in account management or customer success right now. I hope you enjoy this episode of Account Management Secrets. If you're an account manager, you're the one keeping the business running. You own the client relationships, drive the revenue, and solve the tough problems for your customers. Most companies don't give account managers the training or recognition they deserve. That's what you'll get here on the Account Management Secrets podcast. In this show, we cover exactly what you need to succeed. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Hey, Melissa, great to see you. Welcome.
Great to see you as well, Alex. Thanks so much for having me.
You started a new job in January, head of customer success at Virio. We're recording this episode a mere 3 months later in April, and you changed your job title to general manager. Very interesting change. I would love to start by talking about that. I mean, to me, it exposes a lot of interesting questions, and I can't wait to get into it. So tell us about your journey so far.
Absolutely. So I have spent the last maybe 11 years specifically building and scaling customer success departments and really all things post-sales for B2B SaaS companies, startups specifically, which is exactly what I joined Virio to do as well. However, what we have found quite quickly, as you pointed out, is that in a services as a software business, where we're a neo-services firm powered by AI, as opposed to a software as a service type of format. We are in a scenario where there is much more emphasis and importance on all things post-sales. Really, the post-sales department and what we're providing is the entire product. So we are using our proprietary AI tool as well as Claude to achieve what we're achieving here. But the people in post-sales are doing everything that the clients actually receive, just like in a typical services format. It's just more scalable than it's ever been because of AI, which is why we're calling it neo services and this services as a software kind of green field that's starting to happen now in tech. So because of that, GM was a more appropriate label for the amount of oversight that I have as the leader of all things post-sales.
Now, I understand that the company is growing pretty quickly. It's recently, out there in the market, out there in the world, adding something like $1 million of new revenue every month.
That's correct.
And so, I mean, that's awesome. And when you think about the business, when you think about the economics and how you're going to put all this stuff together, how much of a role does your team play in defending the growth, defending the customers, like building that compounding engine?
Yeah, great question. So one thing that is really interesting and unique about the neo services / service as a software space that I'm really in building the plane as I'm flying it here is that we are the product in its entirety. We're producing LinkedIn content for the purpose of driving pipeline and massively impacting brand, right? So we've seen this to be a really incredible channel for a little bit of a kind of high level in terms of how impactful this is when it comes to outreach via cold calling, cold emailing. You're lucky to get about 1 in 100 of those turning into an actual sales call. When you're producing quality LinkedIn content like we're providing, and having DMs with people who are engaging with your content, our customers and us internally are seeing anywhere between 1 and 7 out of 10. So we're talking about exponentially greater pipeline driving that's available here. So we are contributing massively to what our customers are able to achieve with their own revenue goals, and all things in terms of retention and upselling are on my department, which looks like myself. And then under me, I have heads of content who are account managing. So these people are producing the content using our proprietary AI tool, and the content is then going to the customers. So they're relationship managing, they're account managing, and they're producing what is effectively the product all in one. So we are controlling really our own destiny here in a big way. And the kind of upselling that can happen here is really just going to look like adding additional seats, producing content for additional individuals, or adding more posts per week. So maybe we started with 3 and we're going to move to 5 because we're seeing really great results. But what's really interesting here in terms of the metrics is that in traditional SaaS, where I've spent my entire career before this, we're looking at a lot of different KPIs and a lot of different metrics to ascertain how healthy an account is. So we're looking at feature use, functionalities that they're using, user behavior, clicks, what is tied in the product to behaviors that lead to churn, and what kind of behaviors are maybe more likely or have a propensity to lead to upselling into stickiness. And so it makes the path from deal signed and onboarded to expansion or to renewal a lot more convoluted, actually. There are a lot more moving parts, and it can actually be a lot harder to know that an account is healthy. So one thing that's really interesting about a Neo services business is that the path has become much simpler. It's much more black and white. Either we're posting content that we can clearly see is driving the results that we want. You're booking meetings, or you're getting a lot of engagement that's driving that brand recognition that you want and that you're paying for, or not. Very, very simple. Yes or no.
I love that. I love that model. There's very little room for error because you're basically saying like we're either performing or we're not, and there's less lag time, and presumably your clients are tracking this stuff a lot, and then very, very open to providing feedback to you if things need to change. This is an example of what I call acting like an owner, which in my view it's one of the principles of the growth department mindset that I lay out in the book, The Growth Department. And the third one is literally act like an owner. And this is a great example of that, because you are removing all the things that would keep a customer there unnaturally, right? So normally it's long contract terms or lock-in or switching costs and stuff like that. In your world, switching costs are pretty low because I can go find someone else to do this for me. Your contract terms presumably allow people to move in and out pretty quickly. And therefore the onus is all on you to make sure, 2 things. Not only are you delivering the value, which is important, but number 2, that the customer is aware of it. And since you're talking about pipeline creation and getting them conversion rates on messages and stuff like that, the tracking is pretty straightforward there. So you're really saying, here's what we're delivering. We're delivering this set of outcomes to you, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly correct. And I love what you say about acting as an owner. That's actually one of our values, our company values here at Virio, and is very important in how we account manage, because our account managers should be like a consultant to these customers. Because our customers, whether they're enterprise or whether they are super early stage, just getting out the gate and trying to get people aware of who they are, they don't know what their strategy should be when it comes to how their content fits into the puzzle of their go-to-market strategy. And so deciding on that strategy and coaching them and consulting with them around, based on your history, based on where you are in the market today as a business, based on your level of scale and what it is you're trying to do over the next several months, we're going to focus on content that does maybe these three things. So if we're posting for you 3 days a week, that looks like posts that look like A once a week, posts that look like B this other day of the week, and posts that look like C on the third day of the week, for a very specific strategy. And then we're able to also provide details around what's happening in LinkedIn that you would not have access to yourself because of our incredible engineers. So in terms of how we are making ourselves sticky, that looks very different here. It's not necessarily onboarding you onto a piece of software that took 6 months and is going to be very difficult to transfer to something else, or getting into some motion that you do on your day-to-day basis that is maybe mostly automated now, for example. It's just very specifically, we are driving this strategy and the strategy is working, or we're constantly iterating on this strategy to get it to work, and we are your guide through figuring out how to actually use this channel for maximum results.
So speaking of sticky, let's go back to the economics conversation. When you, and I know this, it's a young company, so presumably there's a lot of unknowns here, but when you built your financial model for the year, how much revenue is coming from existing customers versus new customers? What retention rates are you building into your assumptions here in terms of gross retention, meaning just plain old people churning, and our net revenue retention, so expansion and upsell opportunities here? When you mapped out the year, how does that all look, and what did you find yourself as GM committing to in terms of those economics?
That's a great question.
As much detail as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that has been really interesting to see here is that we had no idea what to expect. Right. In January, we came out of stealth. So basically, Jan 1 was day one of Virio. And at that point, we had a decent chunk book of business, and they were all in a 90-day pilot. And so the goal was 100% retention. We just want to retain all of these clients, right? Which is easier said than done. We did not hit 100% retention, as I'm sure all of us in post-sales leadership can relate to. And a lot of that was because we have had to figure out who are our good fit clients, who's actually going to be successful with this model and who is not. And we didn't know that. So at this point, about 4 months in, we've started to get a good handle on that through seeing who actually succeeds and makes it past the pilot and who churns. So at this point, we're sitting at, I want to say, 85% gross retention, which is decent. But we have had to have some churn and learn from that. When it comes to our upselling goals, we actually do not have firmly established upselling goals, but my hunch and what I would like to see us aim for is about 20% by end of year, by expanding to other leaders. So what that looks like for us, and will probably look like for other services as a software folks, is just going to be effectively adding seats or adding days of the week that we're posting.
Okay, so putting more stuff through the existing channel, because presumably you're going out there and you're talking to the sales team or the marketing team, and you start with a small number of people, then you can add on from there. That all counts as upsell in your world.
Exactly. Yes. So maybe we'll start with one of two co-founders, and we are going to go for a specific vertical. One thing that we're very bullish on here, because of the amount of data that we have, is that you really need to niche down into a specific vertical. So you might have a product that works for a lot of different industries, but if you post to a lot of different industries, the algorithm is not going to know who to put you in front of. And so we have to choose that this founder only talks to this industry exclusively. And we're only going to talk about problems that are in that industry that plague your ICPs. But as we get that channel working and that's working well, maybe we have a co-founder or maybe we have another C-suite leader that we're going to have posting to a different industry that's also an ideal industry for you. And we can kind of expand and expand and expand until maybe all 5 industries that your tool is a good fit for are using us to produce content via these different leaders, these different faces of the company on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Even within Amplify, it's everybody's pretty broad. We sort of say, hey, whoever's doing account management, you can come and learn and connect, and it's going to be really valuable for your career. And even then, we do get pulled in certain directions. Like, hey, I want to go deep in the SaaS world or deep in the marketing agency world and what have you. I tend to kind of resist that because I'm like, no, this should be a horizontal thing. But I completely agree with you, and I know the value of niching down, because every time we do it, then we attract more and more people in that niche. So it makes a ton of sense to have you talk about that. Question for you is, in terms of the perception that your leadership has and other leaders that you've worked for in the past, and just generally speaking as part of the zeitgeist here in 2026. There's a lot of sense that customer success is an overhead. Mm-hmm. Customer success is a cost center. Customer success is a cost of doing business, and then you just need to have. How do you address that concern?
Oh my goodness. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I have felt like I'm getting gray hairs over in previous SaaS companies. A lot of the time I have been brought in to fix a retention problem, fix a hole in the bucket. I'm sure many of us have, by leaders who don't understand customer success and just think that's the Band-Aid solution for a retention problem, when really we need to go upstream, and maybe there are product problems, or maybe we're selling people that are not good fits, and customer success is not the entire solution for that problem. We can be the mouthpiece for what the truth is there. We can collect the data and determine, like, these are our churn reasons and these are the things that we need to address. But one thing that I have been just thrilled with moving into this new world of Neo services is that it's very different here. So in Neo services, we are customer success / post sales is the entire product. So more money, more resources, more attention is going into customer success and post sales in this style of business than I've ever seen. And that is enormous for me as a CS or post-sales leader. I have been very happy to see this. But in previous roles, I think that proving value and just explaining to maybe my CEO, my CRO, what customer success really is, and going to bat for the things that we need has been much more of an uphill battle. And I think what I would say to anybody who's engaging in that battle now is just, you have to move away from what I think all of us do when we are younger or a little bit less experienced leaders, of just kind of emotional appeals. The customers are really struggling with this. The customers are really struggling with that. We really have to fix this piece of the product. We really have to add this feature request, and move into a space where we are only making these kinds of requests with data. So what that means in practice or operationally would be, if we have feature requests, then I'm logging the feature requests, but I'm also tracking the dollar amount associated with each contract that is making this feature request, as well as when their renewal is. Because I might have, for example, 100 customers who are all requesting feature A, but their total contract value only adds up to $1 million. And then maybe I have 5 customers who are all requesting feature B, and they're renewing in the next 3 months, and they make up $10 million, then I need to be able to go to my product leadership with some charts and graphs and show that, like, this much money is actually on the line in the next 3 months if we don't implement feature B. So I really need you to implement feature B. And if my product leadership is not moved by that, my CFO and my CEO will most certainly be moved by that and be able to get my product leadership to move on that. So I think moving into a space where we are always communicating with numbers and charts and graphs when you're struggling with that piece is what tips the scales in your favor and gets people to understand why we need to invest in these things.
Do you have examples from your current role on doing exactly that?
In my current role, we don't have feature requests. There's no product, there's no software.
So it's just the account manager is sorting it out with the content manager is sorting it out with the client there on the fly?
Exactly. I would say the closest similarity is going to be capacity modeling, which initially there was maybe an idea that, each account manager who is also responsible for the content can probably manage 20 accounts. And that was something that was just based on gut. That was something that the founders just guessed. And I was able to determine very quickly that was wildly inaccurate. And quality was a problem. We were really struggling. We're a bootstrap startup. We're up here working, long days, long hours, and people were just getting to the point where they could not physically manage, no matter how many hours a week they work, they could not physically manage this amount of accounts and do it well. So capacity modeling would be the closest similarity.
So what was the answer, by the way?
The answer was to put together an actual spreadsheet with, this is how many hours it takes to do these things. There's, these different activities that these account managers actually have to do in a given week. This is how many hours each of these take. If we have X number of clients against these number of hours, then they would need to work 200 hours a week to get all of these things done. Obviously, the math is not mathing here. So what I actually need is X, Y, or Z additional headcount. So that would be the closest similarity. And I still think that we need to do that in a typical SaaS business as well, like that kind of capacity modeling with what activities are happening in a given week, how long they take, can really help in a spreadsheet to show that at this number of customers in our book of business as a department, we need this number of account managers.
Well, I guess to further double click on this, you're talking about being the product, right? Your team is the product, and exactly. and you do have this struggle on like, well, how much do we invest? How many people do we need, and how many accounts can a single account manager handle, and so on. And so, as soon as you're saying, look, we thought it was 20, in reality it's 7. Okay, that means we need 2.5 times more people. Fine. So that's an investment in the product. However, when you think about it from an economic point of view, that presumably is leading to, number one, better retention, right? Because we're able to give them more time to each client. Number two, in theory, and I presume you don't have data on this yet, but in theory, it actually leads to higher growth over time because your account managers are not totally maxed out and they have time to do the relationship management things that will uncover future opportunities, i.e. upsell and expansion. So exactly. That's all part of the conversation here, to get out of the idea that this is just a cost center, cost of doing business.
100%. And one thing that I think is also unique about a neo services firm versus, the old school services. In the past, if you were a content agency, then you would probably have an account manager. And you would also have someone that's producing the content, right? Because they're heads down actually writing all the time. So that's 2 individuals on a per account basis. Because of the AI that we're using, the writers don't have to do very much writing. They have to be competent writers because they need to be able to tweak it. They need to be able to optimize it, right? So they have to understand these concepts. But it's a very, very different world from having to sit down with the interview questions from that call that we had with the client twice a month and pump out 10, 15, 20 posts manually. So instead of having 2 individuals on a per account basis, we only really need 1. So we only need an account manager who is also a competent writer, which does make for a unique hiring profile and an archetype that is not necessarily what I would always be looking for in past roles. But that's really great for our margins as opposed to other services firms. The AI has gotten us into a space where we only need 1 person to do both of those things.
So I certainly get the margin. I certainly get the margin idea. Fewer people or different allocation of where people are spending their time, that works in terms of the economics. In terms of the people that you're hiring, one of the debates that I've seen, one of the trends I've seen is actually, especially within the marketing agency world, because I've had a bunch of leaders on this podcast, within this world is actually more specialization where we have account managers over here and delivery people over there. But you're telling me, no, we've smushed them together. So you're going against the current. Tell me about why that works, especially for you.
So that works really well for us because we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen who are trying to steer things like strategy. We really just need one expert when it comes to the strategy. And B, it's a better client experience. They just have one dedicated human that they know they can always reach out to. We are always in Slack with our customers and communicate with them very regularly. It's a very high touch type of model. And each account manager only has 7 accounts. So they have a quality of relationship and an intimacy of relationship with all of these people where they're able to spend much more time and attention and ensure that there is a much higher level of detail that is thought about in terms of the direction of their content and even the analysis of their data, which is very important as well to help them achieve the best results that they possibly can. It's not something that they would have time for on their own.
It'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time as you grow and become more complex and add clients, whether that model works or whether you wind up, splitting out some of the account management versus production things going forward in terms of the tasks. I want to come back to something we talked about briefly, which is this idea of health scoring and acting like an owner and standing by your results. So very important series of concepts here for people who are managing customers. And in particular, keeping the client up to date with the value that we are providing and making it very clear they understand, without us, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be getting these results and so on. So that's sort of the normal approach. And account managers get that. And everyone likes to show the good results. We like to show the up and to the right graph. What do you do when you're like, oh shit, we're not delivering the conversion rates we hope for, you're not getting the engagement you hope for, people aren't replying, whatever, all the things are. What do you do? How do you coach your team when you don't have the results that you want, but you aren't giving up and you still want to keep the customer? How do you coach your team on that?
That definitely happens. That's happened quite a bit, actually, because generally where we start is, just kind of a hypothesis A. And then as we continue posting, as we continue iterating and collecting data, we're going to change. We're going to change the strategy. So what we're doing is we're collecting data at a high level in terms of what is attracting your ICP, right? So it's like we have data on, hey, for these 20 posts, for these 30 posts, however many posts, X percent of them attracted Y percent of actual ICPs. So most people, when they start out, they have a lot of followers on LinkedIn, a lot of connections on LinkedIn who are old colleagues, right? College friends, maybe people they know from their YC network, from their startup network, right? But these are not people that you want to sell to, generally. We need to actually break into a whole new...
I'm nodding along because that is me, yes. I don't know.
Right? That's all of us.
I have 25,000 connections or something like that. And yeah, they're all over. It's a very wide group of people, very broad.
Exactly. And that's what we always see. That's the same for everybody. So we got to attract an ICP. So that does mean that you're going to get lower engagement to start out with. Because right now, if I start posting for you tomorrow, the people who are following you are not the people that this post is talking to. So there is a little bit of a build-up period. But what matters isn't that these posts in that build-up period got the most engagement. What matters is what percentage of engagers represent the ICP group that we decided on. And as we see these numbers change, we want to see those percentages go up. But we also do routinely have to re-strategize. So there are customers who we have ended up changing their business in sometimes fairly dramatic ways because their original goals were just not working. And maybe we were seeing something in the data that we never would have thought we would see. Maybe it's resonating with a certain group, that was totally surprising to us and to the customer. And so it's like, you know what? Not only are we going to niche down, verticalize down on that for your content, but you're now going to make your software product actually more geared toward that vertical because you had no idea that it was going to super resonate with that vertical and that they were going to actually want to use your tool in these ways. So we have actually contributed to significant product changes for a number of our clients just based on the kind of data that we are collecting.
So how do you actually coach your team to have these conversations?
Great question. I will say a lot of it, especially in early stage startups, something that I believe in very strongly is at an early stage startup, I am also very busy and I need to hire people who have the right experience and have the right intelligence and capability to be able to hit the ground running. Because I am not going to be able to handhold them and I am not going to be able to micromanage them. I don't have the time and I don't have the desire. So I am very strict in terms of the archetype that I hire for. And I'm hiring people who have a lot of these capabilities already. When it comes to leveling them up, because everybody could use a little bit of leveling up on these things, right? We're using a lot of AI. So we're taking marketing strategy expertise and also plugging that into AI because that's going to be better than any, marketing strategist ever could be, right? Like the whole thing is that AI has far more knowledge than any one individual ever could. So I could go hire an expert marketing strategist and they would still not be able to help us out in the same way that AI with all of the knowledge from all of the marketing strategists can help us. So we are a very AI native company, and we also are teaching people how to use AI to help them with this and sit there and workshop with the AI that, hey, this isn't working. This is the data that I'm seeing. I'm not sure what to do for this customer. What do you recommend? Or, ask me 15 questions to help me land on a new strategy for this customer, whatever it might be. But we're definitely leveraging AI in a very high way. And the main thing I would say that we coach people up on is becoming AI native because that is so rare these days.
So speaking of that, let's close, and I would love to hear your thoughts on just generally speaking, how should account managers and CSMs be thinking about the AI transition right now in terms of skills, where to spend their time and energy, what to worry about or not worry about? What's your advice for people who are looking at this and unsure where to go?
Great question. So I would definitely say that anyone saying that AI is going to take CS or account management jobs is out of their mind. That is never going to happen. But what will potentially take your job is a more AI native AM or CSM than you are. So invest the time. Download Claude desktop, start taking courses if you need to, and just start playing around, start building agents, start building scheduled tasks, start playing around with Claude code, and just spend time in it and think about as you are doing your day-to-day work to level this stuff up, is there anything in my day-to-day that could be automated? Or tedious little tasks that I can take off my plate. An example of that for me is I have an AI agent that every day gives me a to-do list first thing in the morning. It goes through my emails, it goes through my calendar, it goes through the Slack messages, it goes through our software to see what's going on with people's posts and gives me a to-do list every morning first thing. I have another one that goes through all of our software and goes into the account management channel and tells everyone at mentioning them, these are the things that you need to do today. Make sure that you follow up on this, or this. These are missing from your posts, whatever it is. So that goes out every morning. So be thinking about things like that, where it's like, what could I connect my Claude to in terms of my calendar, my email, my Slack, my whatever it is, my HubSpot, and start automating things for me and just get in the habit of practicing. Listen to podcasts. Twitter is a really good place for updates on AI. There's a lot of really good conversation happening there. But the main thing is work on becoming as AI native as humanly possible put that kind of stuff on your resume, talk about that on LinkedIn, and that's going to be something that differentiates you in the market and is going to get you chosen over an AM or a CSM who maybe even is more experienced than you, but doesn't have that AI native background or would need a lot more ramp to level up on that.
Fantastic. Love it. Well, hey, Melissa McMillan, this has been a very fun conversation about Neo services. Congrats on Virio. Can't wait to see where that goes and how that business evolves. Thank you so much for joining me on Account Management Secrets.
Thank you for having me, Alex. This has been fun.